Luka is a franchise player, but he's, in my opinion, I don't know if his body will hold up to be a franchise player for 7, 8, 9 years. Now, LeBron is an outlier because he's a physical specimen. And he's like Brady, where he'll spend $1 million, $2 million a year to keep his body in shape. Welcome to episode 265 of Empty the Bench here on the Empty the Bench podcast network presented by Playback. He's Anthony Balester. I'm Nick Morgasen. Follow us on social media at ETB Sports, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Make sure you follow the Empty the Bench podcast network at ETB Network, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and follow our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETB Network. We are approaching 910 subscribers. Help us get to 1,000. Just hit that subscribe button below. It really helps. It helps the algorithm. It helps everything that we're doing. Listen to Empty the Bench wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Acast, YouTube Premium. Anywhere there's audio, you can find this podcast. So check that out as well. And Empty the Bench is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience, from playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. We have done college football. We did the playoffs. We did the national championship. We have the NBA. We have MLB coming up very soon. That's going to start with spring training. Just like I said, stay tuned to our ETB Network social medias to find out more for all that information. And a new thing that we've officially added is the ETB Network Substack, where we're doing a bunch of bonus content and extra content that you might not see on the shows, or we might have some leftover content that we can't use. So we'll put it up to Substack. It's a paywall. Yes. Dread paywall. I know. I don't like saying that either, but it's $5 a month. It's not expensive. Almost every show on this network is going to have a short exclusive ETB Network Substack series on there, including us, actually. And our first one is going to be taped after we finish taping this episode. We are going to be doing a Substack series called Alley-Oop Analytics, which will be focused on the NBA. And dare I say, there's a lot of NBA news that we will get to in this episode. And then we will expand on the NBA trade deadline in our first episode of Alley-Oop Analytics. So please go subscribe to our Substack, etbnetwork.substack.com. It's $5 a month. I promise you it's worth the $5. You're going to get way more things than you expect. Our baseball show is going to be doing a series called Baseball Bonanza. Will Charlton from Forever Power 5, which you're on, is going to be doing a series called Noteworthy in the NCAA, which is going to be covering the college football offseason, college basketball, and even some college sports like college baseball and college hockey from a different perspective. Zambando, who you know across this network, is going to be doing a bonus Zan Zinger on there. If you like opinions, that's a great show. He does it with a little more taste than I would say like a Stephen A. Smith, who will just scream fire in your face, which nobody likes, but this is not what that is. And there's so much more, just unnecessary wagers from Nick D, which is that first one's going to be this week for Super Bowl week. We discussed it to keep it to like plus 1,000. That way people can actually bet it if they want to bet it. So just check it out. etbnetwork.substack.com. All right. Anthony, this is one of those episodes where chaos news broke all over the place. And I think it came to fruition accidentally on my part that a ton of news was going to break, right?
Yeah, I said last week, I was like, I don't think there's going to be a lot of things that happen in the world of sports. We're probably going to have a low rundown. And you're like, nope, every time we say that, there's going to be a bunch of news that breaks. Well, there was about 4 or 5 big stories that broke out in the last 3 days that I can't wait to get into.
Yeah, so I'll just say it right up front. The NBA is going to lead most of this episode. Makes sense, obviously, because the NBA trade deadline is a day from when the show airs. So we're going to talk 2 gigantic trades that went down that no one expected. And I'll say this right now. If anyone says they expected either of these 2 trades, you're lying. I'm just going to say that right now. So we'll talk about that. We will talk about the DC plane crash. There is a sports angle to it. That's the only reason why it's really attached to the show. Obviously, we care because there was another plane crash, obviously, but there is a figure skating Olympic angle attached to it, which we'll talk about. The NFL, obviously, with the Super Bowl coming up, there are some headlines with that. Not really focused there. We're more focused on teams that are not in the Super Bowl. Justin Tucker allegations, which have come out. And I'll tell you right off the bat, there is some journalistic issues involved with that story, too, because apparently the paper did not even give him time to respond to the allegations at all. They kind of just said, here's our allegations, and before he could talk to a lawyer, and then it all broke loose. Also, Myles Garret, that request for a trade comes out of nowhere. I think he just signed a contract fairly recently, didn't he?
I think he did, but it wasn't, I think, so like long term. I think he may be up for another deal within a year or 2.
Okay. And then Cooper Kupp comes out on social media and says, oh, the Rams want to trade me, which it's weird that it comes directly from the player. We'll get into that. The 2025 NBA All-Star rosters were announced. Nothing really a big surprise there. Israel Adesanya, TKO. Everyone was surprised about that, including Zan, who I was talking to about that. And then if we have time, hopefully a UFC 312 preview at the end. But let's get underway with this headline. 28 members of the skating community unfortunately died in a DC plane crash. If you were unfortunately living under a rock and you didn't catch the news, there was a normal plane and a Black Hawk helicopter that unfortunately directly crossed paths, and it led to them hitting and ending up in the Potomac River. And I don't think there were any survivors, correct? I think everybody passed away, unfortunately. It says 66 of the bodies have been positively identified, and basically no one has survived. These planes were destroyed. Like, they were absolutely ripped to shreds. Obviously, a lot of people are going to have questions about what happened. I'll tell you right now, I really have no interest in the political side of this at all. I could care less. This has nothing to do with politics. This is about 28 members of the figure skating team who were not expecting to pass away in a plane crash. And for some reason, people are acting really odd on social media about it. Basically say, oh, well, it's political. There was a plan for it. But I'm like, guys, can we just focus on like that 28 people lost their lives for figure skating that had, and I saw a video of one of these guys who like was doing these videos and like he looked like he was going somewhere with this. But I don't know. First reaction to when you saw it, what do you think?
Definitely very sad. And, my condolences and prayers go out to all those people who lost their lives and all the family members who are going to have to live the rest of their lives with this grief. It was very, very tragic. One of the saddest moments we've seen in a long time. And these are just one of those topics that at the end of the day, I really don't like talking about, but obviously we have to talk about it. Definitely very sad. And, it definitely seemed like, I don't know the ins or outs of it, but maybe it could have been prevented. I know it was at night. And I know the way it happened, maybe it was tough to see, but I know maybe there could be some better ways the way that airlines work. And what made this so shocking is that we were just speaking last week about the Kobe Bryant 5-year anniversary, and honestly, that was my first reaction. It was like, wow, we were just talking about the tragedy that happened with Kobe Bryant and his plane crash, and then now seeing this one that was obviously, equally as tragic. And, I feel so bad because there were so many young people that lost their lives. And like I said, all I can say is, my condolences and prayers go out to them. And like you said, Nick, I agree with you. I don't care about the politics. I really don't read into any of that because I just think that's absolute bullshit. At the end of the day, people lost their lives, and I think it was just a mistake that no one at the end of the day would want this to happen, but unfortunately it happened. And I think some people got to let their political views, put aside and, just, be in grief and, give your thoughts and prayers to the people who lost their lives.
Yeah, and one of the things that this is information I'm seeing for the first time as I'm reading, supposedly the plane was at 325 feet when the collision occurred, meaning the helicopter was well above the 200-foot ceiling that choppers are restricted to over the Potomac. So they're saying that the helicopter, the Black Hawk, was too high, meaning that the plane must have been in the right place, wherever it was supposed to be, but the helicopter was too high, causing the collision. So, again, you and I are not aviation experts. We don't know this stuff. But it also sounds just like either a lapsed judgment from the Black Hawk helicopter, possibly. I don't know. The other report that came out was the tower that watches all the planes go by. There was one person doing a job for supposedly for two people watching the planes. Now, whose fault is that? I could not tell you. I don't know. But if that's the case, maybe they could have prevented something, and maybe they could have either redirected either the plane or the helicopter, depending on if they saw what was happening. But again, politics aside, 28 people lost their lives who had bright futures probably in the sport. And it makes me sometimes question social media in today's day and age. Makes me sound old, by the way, when I say that. But I go on social media, people react very strange to some of these stories. Like, oh well, this reason and this reason and this reason. We got to stop doing that. Like, in today's cultural society, we got to stop with assumptions for why things happen. So things just happen. You can't. Things happen for a reason. Unfortunately, like there's no timing mechanism that controlled this. There was no. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a nice way to say it. Like there was no attempt at doing this. It just happened. So you got to feel bad for the families. You got to feel bad. There was a lot of young kids on this plane too, which makes it worse. Like, and now, and like, again, not to take it to a news angle, but like people are afraid to fly right now because of all the different plane crashes and incidents we've had. Like you and I were talking about the one that just happened in Philadelphia. Even though that wasn't a large scale plane, it still had a fiery explosion and caused an issue. So just pray for the families, feel bad for them, and let's not make it political. Let's not make it social media heavy. We're not looking for clout. That's not the goal. And hopefully the families can recover in due time is basically the way I look at it. All right. Let's move on to the NBA. Let's talk about some happier things. This headline, when I saw it, I was watching, I forgot what game I was watching. I was watching an NBA game, and all of a sudden I hear them saying, oh, Luka Doncic traded for Anthony Davis and a bunch of pieces. And I quickly ran over to my Twitter, our Twitter pages. Excuse me. And I said, there's no way this can be real, right? And I see Shams' account, but what's the big thing you have to be careful with on Twitter right now? You pay for verification. You have to make sure it's actually the right verified Shams account. So I go and I look and I'm like, oh, it's his account. It's got almost 3 million followers. That's him. And I see a trade and it says this tweet: breaking, the Dallas Mavericks are trading Luka Doncic, Max Kleber, Markieff Morris to the Lakers for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a 2029 first-round pick. And they had Utah's, what I like to call the squeaky wheel, third team, just to get the contracts and stuff in order. My first reaction was, wow, number one. And I guess the Mavs, to me, that signals like a blow up of the team a little bit, because Luka was your franchise guy in Dallas. He's your leader, kind of, because I wouldn't really consider him a leader type player, but he was your franchise player. And now you trade him away for essentially nothing, in my opinion, because Anthony Davis is not your future in Dallas. I know he's signed for another 3 or 4 seasons, which is incredible to me that Anthony Davis, with all the injuries he had, could even get a contract where in the final 2 years of his deal, he's going to make $62 million and $66 million, respectively, in those final 2 years. But I started to say this at the beginning of the episode. If you tell me that you expected this trade, you are crazy. You are absolutely crazy if you thought this deal was going to happen. What was your first reaction, number one, before we really dive into this?
So, yeah, I'll give my story as well. I was playing NBA 2K25, and I just got done playing a game in my NBA career mode, and I go to look at my phone, and I see a trade with Luka Doncic. In my head, I'm thinking, okay, well, it's probably one of these hypothetical trades that a lot of these analysts put out there for articles. And I'm reading it, and they're saying, oh, Anthony Davis, and it's confirmed. So I'm like, I did the same thing you did, Nick. I went on Twitter, confirmed it. Everybody's talking about it, and my jaw just drops. And I literally couldn't believe it. I mean, for a guy who's 25 years old and who's widely regarded when he's healthy as one of the 3 or 5 best players in the world, and he's like an international superstar. He's the franchise. And not only that, he's been talked about as potentially being one of these all-time greats. He's been talked about with the likes of LeBron. He's been talked about with the likes of Larry Bird. There's been plenty of people who said that he could be one of those all-time greats. And, I know Mark Cuban is not the owner, but Mark Cuban even said when he was the owner that he would file for a divorce before he would trade Luka Doncic. So, for Luka Doncic to be traded, it was definitely a surprise. And I think they lost on the trade. I feel like they should have had to have given up more. I don't see any way that the Lakers should have got Luka Doncic without including at least Austin Reeves and probably another first-round pick.
They didn't trade their first-round pick. That's what's crazy about this.
Yes. Yeah, they should have had to give up an additional pick, and they should have had to give up Austin Reeves as well. So I think they definitely lost on this trade. I do think, obviously, Anthony Davis, when healthy, may be the best or second-best defender. So obviously with him potentially be able to play the 4 because they got the centers, being that great defensive anchor, being able to put up 20 and 10, obviously he'll make their team better defensively. You got Kyrie Irving. But at the end of the day, you're not going to be like Luka. And I think with Luka, you had the ceiling of winning a championship. I think without Luka, your ceiling is probably a second-round playoff berth.
Right. And we're going to break this down a little bit. So if you're really looking for details, we're going to give it to you now. But in my opinion, Luka is a franchise player, but in my opinion, I don't know if his body will hold up to be a franchise player for 7, 8, 9 years. Now, LeBron is an outlier because he's a physical specimen. And he's like Brady, where he'll spend $1 million, $2 million a year to keep his body in shape. That's not Luka. We can admit that right off the bat, that Luka's not a workout, healthy type athlete. Because if I'm not mistaken, the reports were saying he was pushing 270 or 280, which is big for an NBA player. Like, that's not a center, by the way, or a big man. But just to give the trade for perspective's sake, which Shams was the first one to really be on top of, the Lakers get Doncic, Kleber, and Morris. The Mavericks get Anthony Davis, Max Christie, who I like, by the way. I think he's a really good player, and a 2029 Lakers first round pick. They only had to part with one. And And then the Jazz got Jalen Hood Shanifo, 2025 Clippers second, and 2025 Mavs second. That was more of a cleanup because they needed it for the extra pieces. But I don't know what the Mavs were doing. And then there were reports now coming out, season ticket holders are canceling up the wazoo because they don't have Doncic. There were a lot of Luka fans in Dallas, a ton. And now they're offering refunds of like up to $2,000 to each person that cancels their season tickets. And my opinion is going to be the unpopular one, probably. And people are going to say that I'm probably like gas bagging when I say this, but I don't think Luka is going to be the franchise player in Los Angeles. I don't think he has that quality mentality to be a franchise player. He's a good scorer. He's a really good offensive player. He's not going to play any defense. He's just not. It's not his game. And he gets hurt a ton. What is he, coming off a calf injury as we speak right now? I mean, the guy is always hurt. He's always hurt. He's always complaining. He's acting immature as a star. I mean, the Lakers won the trade. I'm not questioning that. Is it the right move? I don't know. That's where I have a lot of questions.
I mean, I definitely think he's going to be the franchise player. And I know me and you, Nick, usually agree. But I guess this is going to be one of the things that we disagree on. I absolutely love Luka. And I think he could be a future face of the NBA. Not only as a future face of your franchise, I think he could end up being one of the future faces of the NBA. I mean, I think he's that great. I know he does struggle with defense, and maybe his conditioning can be better. But just like his dad said, I mean, you're talking about a guy who just over a year ago played over 100 games, playing, averaging over 40 minutes a game, and took this team to the NBA Finals. I mean, this guy has had great playoff runs. I mean, he's like second all time in points per game in the playoffs. So when it comes time for a clutch game, he performs. So you can rely on him in the clutch. And I think, obviously, yeah, maybe you could question his conditioning and maybe his work ethic. Maybe he can work a little harder. But now you're going to pair him with LeBron, who's the hardest working player. LeBron's going to take him under his wing and teach him a lot of that. I think one thing that's going to be interesting is, I know a lot of people have stated this is going to be the first time in LeBron James's great career where he's going to be the second best player on his own team. He's always been unanimously the best player on every team he's played for. This would be the first time where Luka is actually the best player and the future face of the franchise. He's the more valuable player because of just the fact of his age. He's 25 years old. He's going to be there, obviously, a hell of a lot longer than LeBron. Obviously, I think this also may extend LeBron's career because maybe LeBron may be retired after a year or two. I think with Luka, he may play a little longer. So I really like Luka, and I think under LeBron's wing, I think he can start to condition himself better. And right now, if I was starting the NBA franchise, he would probably be my second or third guy I'm picking. Obviously, you got Victor Wembanyama. If you want to talk about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you can. Maybe Jokic. But, man, I would have a tough time not picking Luka second or third out of any player in the NBA right now.
It's interesting. I think, like I said, I would take Wemby probably first, starting a franchise. Then I'd probably take Jokic, and then I would probably take Alexander probably third. I think those are the top three guys right now. And if you want to throw Giannis maybe as a fourth, as long as he's healthy, because he's been having back issues and health issues. Luka's got to show me more and prove that he could be a leader. That's where I'm having the issues. I'm not questioning that he can be a 30-point scorer, 25, 30-point a night scorer. But when LeBron goes, I don't know if he could be a leader, like the direct leader of this Lakers franchise. That's a lot of pressure going from Dallas to Los Angeles. And no disrespect to the Clippers, but the Lakers are always going to be treated as number one when you go to LA. So that's one part of it. You brought up LeBron. Let's talk about that timeline, because I call BS on LeBron James, because LeBron says he was out to dinner with his family after being at MSG, but by the way, putting on an unbelievable performance, a 33-point triple-double at Madison Square Garden. And he claims he had no idea the trade was coming and hadn't been in communication with the Lakers. Do you really expect me to buy that? Like, seriously? You expect me to buy the fact that LeBron had no idea the trade was coming?
Well, I mean, I actually do buy it. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, Nick, when you really look at it. The Lakers were actually doing pretty good. They're like the fifth seed in the West. They're on a decent win streak. They played really good basketball over the last 10 games. And I don't think they were shopping Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis has actually had a really good year. So I don't think that they were calling teams trying to trade Anthony Davis. And I think it's true. I think Dallas was the team who called the Lakers and said, hey, we only want to trade Luka Doncic to you, and we want Anthony Davis. And of course, the Lakers aren't going to say no. And I think immediately they called LeBron, and LeBron found out that way. I don't think there would have been any way for LeBron to know prior, because I think Dallas is the one who initiated the trade to begin with. They're the one who called the Lakers, not the Lakers calling Dallas.
I don't know. I'm just not buying he's acting like completely surprised, which is what I don't buy. Like that's the thing that's bugging me. I see the Shams tweet also based on what you're saying. This was on the 2nd a couple days ago. The Mavericks approached the Lakers recently and offered Luka Doncic. Lakers brass met and believed that the 25-year-old Doncic has the ability to be the face of their franchise for the next decade while giving Anthony Davis a win-now move in Dallas. So there's a lot of questions here. And I want to get to Dallas, and I want to get to Nico Harrison, the GM of the Mavericks, because holy crap, this guy acts like one of the dumbest individuals I've ever seen to be a GM. And when he came out and said, "Oh, well, we traded him because defense wins championships," does it? In today's game, does defense win championships? I don't think so. You need scorers. You need scorers. I mean, that's ludicrous that he would come out and say, "Oh, let me just trade my franchise guy. We'll bring in Anthony Davis to play defense." But if he doesn't stay on the court, does that prove your theory? It doesn't.
And you're also forgetting one thing too, Nick. This is his second fumble. He also let Jalen Brunson walk out the door and go to the New York Knicks thinking this guy's not going to be a superstar. He goes to the Knicks. Now he actually is a franchise player and took that team deep into the playoffs. So just imagine you had Luka and Jalen Brunson, and now both of them are out of Dallas, and now you're stuck with Kyrie and Anthony Davis.
I mean, there is reports, and I don't know how true they are, that they're trying to go after KD. I don't know how true that is. First of all, can you imagine if KD and Kyrie are back in the same team uniform again after that was a complete nightmare? I know because I'm a Brooklyn Net fan, but I think that would be a disaster if you ask me. But just Nico Harrison is just awful, an awful GM. Like you said, he fumbled on Jalen Brunson, which, again, I wouldn't say Brunson was a complete guarantee to be a star, but he proved himself to be a star. And it also helps that he's in New York and he's doing well in New York. That's just helping his stock raise up more and more as we go. If they had won that Pacers series, I think he would have gone all the way up stock-wise. But you essentially traded for Anthony Davis. Let's just call a spade a spade. And the guy can't stay on the court. The guy can't stay healthy if his life depended on it, and he's getting paid all this money. Like, not that I really want to talk about this guy in comparison, but look at Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid with the 76ers, a guy who can't stay healthy, and the Sixers have already come out and said he's only playing every other day, making all this money. That's going to be Anthony Davis, I feel like, in Dallas.
I know you got people like Stephen A. Smith saying, "Oh, they're going to be the top team in the West." You got people like Kendrick Perkins saying that Dallas won the trade. I don't see any way you could believe that. Like, honestly, I think at best they're a second-round playoff team in the West. I don't see any way they're going to win the West and make the finals or even make the Western Conference Finals. There's no way they're making it past the second round.
Kyrie Irving can't stay healthy either. People are forgetting that. Like, so if Kyrie can't stay healthy, Anthony Davis can't stay on the court. Who's playing? Who's playing when these two guys are not playing? You have nobody. Bench guys? That's not going to win. I forgot the name of the guy who I actually really like. He's a younger scorer for Dallas who they rely on. They give the ball a lot. But I just remember he scores a ton for the... Washington. PJ Washington, I think is his name. He's a really good player in Dallas. Like, really, really good player. He kept them in the NBA Finals, at least a little bit, even though they didn't win very much, but kept the games competitive. So what are you going to do? You're going to rely on him now to score? I mean, that's what we're looking at here. But I don't know. In my opinion, LeBron is always going to be option one when he's on this team, even at 40 years old. Even though everyone say, well, when you bring him in, he's got to be the number one. Luka's got to be number one. Okay, he's got to prove that though. He's got to prove that and embrace the Laker uniform and show that he can play. But
the last thing I'll say about this too is one thing is what's crazy is you're going to have two guys now who basically are career 28-8 guys. I mean, both LeBron and Luka both almost get 27, 20 points a game. They both get 8 assists a game, and they both get about 7 or 8 rebounds a game. So it's going to be interesting to see how those guys gel together. And one last thing, too, is everybody's saying, oh, what's the NFL equivalent to this trade? I mean, the only thing that I could think of is, say, if you had a guy like Joe Burrow who's had his injury issues, if what if the Bengals traded Joe Burrow for Matthew Stafford and a first-round pick? I think that would be the equivalent to this. I know there's a couple other people that put a different, scenarios out there, but there's not really a scenario out there for this because it's unprecedented. A trade like this should have never happened.
The last thing I'll say is these two are ball-dominant guys. That usually does not work when you have two stars that are ball-dominant guys on the same team. So that is the more interesting scenario I want to see with two guys that need the ball in their hands nonstop, how that's going to work. All right, more NBA trade deadline news. If that wasn't enough, De'Aaron Fox, who was on the Kings and is going to be a superstar in the next couple of years, going to be a really, really good player, gets traded to the Spurs and Zach Lavine to the Kings. So this trade, I don't know. This one was like batshit crazy when this trade broke to the point where I went live to talk about it. We had hundreds and thousands of people watching me talk about a live stream for talk about this trade. I know why the Spurs did it. They wanted to get Wemby a decent, not even, I shouldn't say decent, a star to play next to him. Wemby's going to be, I think, the face of the NBA. I think he's the legitimate face of the NBA for the next decade, not Luka. I think Wemby has more potential to perform and really come through to get where the NBA is going to go. So I look at this trade and I look at there was a lot of moving pieces in this deal also. So the Spurs get De'Aaron Fox and Jordan McLaughlin. The Kings get Zach Lavine, City Cisco, 3 first-round picks, 2025 Charlotte, 2027 Spurs, 2031 Minnesota, and then 3 second-round picks. So they got 6 picks out of this deal, which is almost like capital currency when you get 6 picks like that. And then the Bulls, they got Zach Collins, Trey Jones, Kevin Hurt. I mean, they're more the squeaky wheel third team too. But this one was shocking too, right?
Yeah, I know there was rumors about De'Aaron Fox being on the trading block. So obviously De'Aaron Fox being traded wasn't too much of a surprise, but going to the Spurs was obviously a surprise. But, I'm glad that the Spurs are trying to do right by Victor Wembanyama. They're building around him. And there's a reason why I didn't say Luka would be the number one guy to build a franchise around, because it would be Victor Wembanyama. I mean, the guy's 7'5" and could shoot the 3 and can pretty much do everything. I mean, the guy doesn't have a weakness. And yeah, like you said, Nick, he probably will be the actual face of the league soon. And with a guy like De'Aaron Fox, an all-star scorer who could put up 25 to 30 a night, I mean, that's exactly the guy that he needs, along with Chris Paul, who could distribute the ball and be smart and play good defense. I think this is a team that could sneak into the playoffs. Obviously, they're probably a year or two away from going on that deep playoff run, but I think with this move, they could definitely sneak in and maybe get into the play-in tournament and ultimately get into the first round of the playoffs. For Sacramento, I mean, it sucks. They had De'Aaron Fox, and they were kind of in purgatory for a while. They weren't having much success. Then they got Sabonis, and they were a playoff team. It looks like they were starting to go in the right direction. It seems like they kind of took a step back. And, I'm glad for De'Aaron Fox because I think he's in a better organization, and I think he's too good of a player to be wasted in an organization like the Sacramento Kings.
I love Sabonis, too. He's like one of my favorite guys because he's kind of like a gritty big man, not full big man, but big man. He can shoot from distance. He's going to grab you 20 rebounds a game. That lineup looks incredible, by the way. And the guy that a lot of people are not talking about is Zach Lavine, obviously, because this guy did not want to be in Chicago at all. Just did not. He basically gave up on the fans and the city of Chicago and said, F it, I'm not playing hard for you guys whatsoever. And it proved because the team's in the dump right now. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, they paid him a nice chunk of money too, and he just did it. Now, I can't blame him for the injuries. He had a lot of injuries, but when he came back, he just didn't care at all. Just didn't want to be there. And so part of this, believe it or not, because everyone's saying, what's the Bulls' value in this trade? Well, they got rid of Zach Lavine because they knew he didn't want to be there anymore. And it also helped to facilitate the picks and the move for the trade. I really like De'Aaron Fox. I think he's going to be an amazing player. Sacramento has been a dump for a very long time. And like you had said before, I thought they were just starting to get somewhere. And by the way, Mike Brown got ditched. Like it was unfair that he got fired as the head coach of the Kings. He's a really good coach. He was with Cleveland when they won their title. He was with Golden State as their assistant coach. He's got a pedigree. I think he just unfairly got fired from this role because the franchise was not ready to improve and be better. So De'Aaron Fox will definitely be way better under the Popovich regime when he's able to come back and coach. But having veteran experience as a coach, that just makes you better as a star. And watching De'Aaron Fox and Wemby, you don't think Spurs fans are going to want to come out every single night to see those two playing with each other? Now, they got to figure out the rest of their team because the rest of their team is really young, but they have the pieces now with two stars. And now people are going to want to play in San Antonio. Maybe you get a veteran or two who still has a lot left that wants to come in to San Antonio. And it just seems like Popovich's career is just going to keep getting extended because he gets lucky and falls into all of these players. But I don't know. Who wins this trade? The Spurs obviously won this trade by far. The Kings, I think, are happy to get 6 picks. That's probably what they're looking at here. Because I don't know if Zach Lavine can be recoverable, in my opinion. So where do you see this trade kind of lean?
Well, obviously, it's definitely got to be with the Spurs. They got the best player in the trade. Obviously, De'Aaron Fox is only 27 years old. He's just entering the prime of his career. And like you said, he's going up. Obviously, I think Zach Lavine, I think he still could do and have good success with the Kings. He was just in an absolute dumpster fire in Chicago. And I think any player playing for Chicago would probably want to get out. I think right now they got to trade everybody. They probably should trade Vucevic as well and just go into a complete rebuild and just build on those young rookies that they draft over the next couple of years. But for the Kings, I think it allows the Kings, obviously, De'Aaron Fox was probably looking to go to another team. It allows them to move on from De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox can go to a team that he can have success on, but I think it allows the Kings to also maybe be successful as well. I think Zach Lavine, being 20 to 25 points per game, obviously he won't be as good as De'Aaron Fox, but I think he'll be good enough to keep that team competitive with Sabonis. And now you have Zach Lavine pairing back up with DeMar DeRozan. So I think this would be a pretty good move for the Kings, but obviously the Spurs got the better end of the deal, and I can't wait to see the future growth of Victor Wembanyama and De'Aaron Fox together.
Yeah, so we'll leave this here because obviously now with our ETV Network Substack, you and I are doing alley-oop analytics for the NBA side. So we'll break more of this down, including the NBA trade deadline. We'll break these two trades down briefly because we're doing it now on the episode, but a little more into detail. But most of the trade deadline, we'll talk about Jimmy Butler also on our first edition of alley-oop analytics because that's a dumpster fire if I ever saw one, including refusing now to go to Golden State because he wouldn't sign an extension. And in my opinion, I'll just leave it as Jimmy Butler is now the alienator of the NBA. Basically, his career, I think, is over, in my opinion, because he just can't get out of his own way. But I'll leave that for another day. Let's move on to the NFL. Now, this dropped out of thin air, like quite literally dropped out of thin air. Justin Tucker allegations. If I'm not mistaken, it has to do with a massage parlor again. What was it? Like 6 or 7 different massage parlor workers came out and accused him of supposedly acting a little fishy inside of a massage parlor. What were your initial thoughts on this?
Obviously, I was shocked. I felt like it was Deshaun Watson all over again. And I even saw that there was a couple of massage parlors that even banned them completely from coming back to their facilities. And, it's just unfortunate because a guy like Justin Tucker is one of the all-time greatest kickers. I mean, I've been watching him, basically throughout almost my whole childhood growing up, watching him kick clutch kicks for Baltimore for over the last decade. And it's funny because he has been struggling recently, and it's been weird because it's not like he's old for a kicker, but he's been off the last year or so, and now it's starting to get me thinking. Maybe is he struggling because he's got too much things on his mind that's going on off the field, and then when you add in these allegations, I mean, I know he really wasn't able to defend himself, but it seems like the way these allegations are going, there may be some truth to it. Obviously, we'll never know. But like I said, my first reaction was it's Deshaun Watson all over again.
I mean, I'm just reading some of the reports just so people have some detail to understand what is going on. First of all, I've never heard of the Baltimore Banner. That doesn't sound like one of your typical large news headline type papers or digital platforms. In total, 9 massage therapists in the Baltimore area have accused Tucker of inappropriate behavior. All the incidents reportedly occurred from 2012 to 2016, which were Tucker's first 5 seasons in the NFL. In the late accusations, one woman produced what she said was an internal report from 2015 about her experiences with Tucker. She told the Banner that Tucker stroked her inner thigh during a massage, would expose himself, and left what she believed to be ejaculate on the table. If these are true, now, number one, as a podcast, as a media, everything is allegedly until proven guilty. So those are bad things. If those are true, that's bad. It says that the person also reached out to a reporter about her allegations in 2015, but didn't continue over fears of retaliation. So, wow, is all I can say. The latest allegations came from 3 massage therapists who worked at the same downtown Baltimore men's spa. Through an attorney, the owner of the spa told the Banner that he was unaware of any complaints against Tucker. In response to the new accusations, Tucker's lawyer told the Banner to refer to the kicker's social media post because I don't know if you saw the post he put out, but Tucker called the allegations, quote, unequivocally false. So this is a lot to take in. I don't know what to believe. I don't know what you believe. I don't know what the common person believes, but what do you think at this point in time with these allegations?
Yeah, like I said, we just saw a player go through this, and at the end of the day, time will tell. We'll just have to see, let due process happen, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens and how this unfolds. Is the NFL going to put him on the commissioner's exempt list? I know they didn't so with Deshaun Watson, so they probably won't suspend him yet until everything is played out. I know it's unfair because you have people like Adrian Peterson and others who got put on the commissioner's exempt list, but maybe I guess Deshaun Watson and Justin Tucker are exempt.
I mean, I remember the AP one all too well because he was hitting his kid with a belt, and obviously that's a no-no, obviously. But it says on Thursday, the Ravens issued a statement. This was Thursday last week, saying, "We take any allegations of this nature seriously. We'll continue to monitor the situation." 3 years ago, Ravens coach John Harbaugh referred to the team's zero-tolerance policy for domestic violence when asked about Deshaun Watson's 6-game suspension following the accusations of sexual misconduct with a massage therapist. Okay, so obviously he agrees that Deshaun Watson did something wrong. So if his own player did something wrong, then we got problems. I agree with you that his mind might be in a few different places because he was missing a lot of kicks during the season. Again, we don't know. This could be a lie for all we know. We don't know. I'm not saying one side or the other because we don't know. We have to wait for the end.
Look at Matt Ariza. I mean, the punter for the Bills. I mean, there was a lot of accusations. The Bills had to cut him, almost lost his career. He ended up being found innocent. Thank God he was able to get his career back, and now he's in the Super Bowl with the Chiefs. But like you said, you never know. And it's just unfortunate if these are lies, because these lies could ultimately destroy a person's integrity and their career and character. So if they're lies, I mean, that's definitely very wrong.
And that's part of the issue of what I was saying before with social media. And basically anyone has a microphone these days. Anyone could tweet out or put a video out on TikTok or YouTube or Instagram, say, I saw this player do this. And unfortunately, now everyone thinks when they see one person post an allegation that it's true, rather than actually doing the investigation and seeing if the allegations are fact or not. But right now, the jury's out. We have no idea if he did it or not did it. And we're going to have to kind of wait and see where this goes. If he did it, he's got to be suspended. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the first suspension is like 6 or 7 games based on allegation if this comes out. Now, Deshaun Watson was an outlier, ended up with I think 11 games. I think he ended up getting suspended. But there were a lot of facts in that case, which proved him to be guilty. This, we have nothing. So just right now, I would say just wait and see because we don't know. All right, moving on to more NFL. This drops out of thin air too. Myles Garrett requests a trade. I was very surprised. Now, in the NFL, it's a business like any other sport. Maybe he's not happy with the whole situation going on in Cleveland. He is the top defensive player in the league, in my opinion. I mean, unless J.J. Watt has a debate or argument. I mean, T.J. Watt, not J.J. Watt. T.J. Watt has an argument to make. But what do you think? You're head deep into the NFL for sure. So what did you make of this trade request?
I mean, honestly, Nick, I wasn't really shocked at all. I know they were stating, about a month ago that Myles Garrett was basically saying, like, hey, like, I'm going to talk to Cleveland Brass, and if they're going to kind of go into a rebuild or they're not going to go into the direction I want to be competitive, then ultimately I'm going to want out. And why blame him? I mean, he's 29 years old. He's in a win now mode. I mean, these athletes only have a small window to capitalize on their careers. So he's only got about a 3 to 5 year window to be in his prime, and he wants to win a championship. And it just sucks because he came to the Cleveland Browns. They were the worst organization in football, and we got to see him sort of build their way up. They built up a great defense. They had Nick Chubb, Baker Mayfield. Then they got rid of Baker Mayfield and brought in Deshaun Watson, and I feel like it pretty much went downhill from there. Obviously, Deshaun Watson got hurt. Flacco came in. They got some juice. They were able to make the playoffs. But then they got knocked down in the first round very, very badly. I mean, Houston made them look like crap. And then ultimately this season, they've been an absolute dumpster fire all year. And I feel like, are they going to get any better? I mean, you're stuck with Deshaun Watson. I mean, so how much better is this team going to get next year or the year after? So if you're Myles Garrett, you want to go to a team that wins. And ultimately, as a Buffalo Bills fan, I think that would be the perfect fit for him. I mean, he wants to win, and the Bills desperately need defense. I mean, they have draft picks. They could give draft picks. They could give up Gregory Rousseau, but there's also other teams that could give up a lot for Myles Garrett. I mean, we've seen what the Raiders got when they traded Khalil Mack so many years ago. I mean, they got multiple first-round picks, and Myles Garrett is pretty much around the same age as Khalil Mack was, I think maybe a few years older, but still at the prime of his career. So it's definitely going to cost a lot, probably potentially multiple first-round picks. But if I'm the Bills or if I'm a contender, I'm going all in for Garrett.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong, actually. I think the Bills would be a good fit. I think the Texans would be a really good fit, too. I think the Bucks would be a really good fit to kind of build their defense because Baker has tendency to a lot of interceptions, so they need help defensively to kind of keep teams off the board. But I think the Bills, and then I think the Patriots would actually be a really good spot, even though they're not 100% ready yet to compete. But I think with Mike Vrabel there and finally kind of finding the way they're going to go, I think Myles Garrett would be a great little addition there to kind of help build that defense. That way they can focus more on offense.
Now, if he goes to the Patriots, do you think that's going to be worth the fourth overall pick in the draft?
That's a good question. They already have the quarterback, so it's not like they're going to be drafting a quarterback in the top, because that's kind of where they are in the draft at the top. They're not going to change their mind. They're going to build on what they have now. What is the projection on that pick? Do you know kind of what that pick might be, the fourth overall?
Well, it depends on Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter doesn't go to Cleveland. I mean, it could be Travis Hunter or it could be Abdul Carter. who looks like a potential next Micah Parsons. So it kind of depends on where you're at as the Patriots. I mean, do you want a guy who's going to come in and he's already proven as the best, or do you want a guy like Odell Carter who you can get on a rookie contract who can end up being an All-Pro in a couple years? So I think and I feel like if you're the Cleveland Browns, I feel like it would have to take the 4th overall pick. You're not going to take any second-round picks, and the Patriots don't have any players that they're going to give up. So I feel like if the Patriots get Garrett, it had to be the 4th overall pick. But as a Patriots fan, I feel like where they're going in the direction, I feel like it may make more sense to take the rookie defensive end and pass rusher and build around him instead of going for Garrett, who's in the win now mode now.
Yeah, like I said, I think the Bills, who need something to get over the top, again, in the worst way, they need something to get over the top because they just can't. I don't know if that gets them past the Chiefs, but it makes them more competitive defensively against the Chiefs. Imagine Mahomes having to go up against that with the Bills. That's much more of a deeper threat than what the Bills were going into this game. I mean, I have the letter up here from Garrett. As a kid dreaming of the NFL, all I focused on was the ultimate goal of winning a Super Bowl, and that goal fuels me today more than ever. My love for the community of Northeast Ohio and the incredible fan base of the Cleveland Browns has made this one of the toughest decisions of my life. These past 8 years have shaped me into the man that I am today. While I've loved calling this city my home, my desire to win and compete on the biggest stages won't allow me to be complacent. The goal was never to go from Cleveland to Canton. It has always been to compete for and win a Super Bowl. With that in mind, I've requested to be traded from the Cleveland Browns. So he's basically telling you that you're never going to win a Super Bowl in Cleveland. Basically, in nice words, is what he's saying. I don't know. There's really not much more to say about that, right? Like, he's basically telling you I'm out. Or now, is Cleveland going to play hardball and say, if we don't get what we want, you're not going anywhere?
Yeah, I heard that that they kind of already knew about this trade days ago, and it was actually Garrett who decided to make it public. But then I guess there was rumors saying that they've people in private have asked the GM about it, and he said, yeah, we're not open to the trade talk. So this could get very ugly. And, if this carries on to the season, maybe this turns into a holdout. We don't know how ugly it can get, but if it turns out to be a standoff where Garrett demands to be traded, but they don't want to trade him, I mean, it's going to get ugly very, very fast.
And I think that would be a mistake if Cleveland drags this into the off-season workouts and eventually into practice and all that stuff. Just trade him. You might as well just get as high amount of value as you can out of him, whatever that is, if you could get a top 5 pick in this coming draft. But that's going to be tough because most of the teams need their top 5 overall picks to rebuild.
I mean, there's already enough distractions going on in Cleveland with Deshaun Watson. I mean, they don't need another distraction going into next season.
Exactly. That actually, you beat me to that point. I was going to say that too. That enough with Deshaun Watson. Now you're going to have distractions that Myles Garrett wants a trade request. I mean, just trade the guy. And I'm not even saying he's a bad guy for requesting a trade. He deserves to go to a place and win. I forgot that he's been here for 8 years, 8 seasons. That's he's 29. So that feels young to me for 8 seasons, but we'll have to wait and see. I do think the Bills actually are probably a number 1 destination, but what are you trading to get him? That's my question. What were you starting to say about what you would trade for him?
Well, we have Gregory Rousseau, who's a really good young pass rusher as well. I would honestly give up him and 2 first-round picks.
So you're willing to invest that draft capital for Garrett? Okay, that's interesting. Like I said, Bills, Texans, Bucks. Those are 3 teams I would really look at. So we'll have to see what happens. Now to some interesting news across the NFL, which came from a player this time. Rams put Cooper Kupp on the trading block, but it came from Cooper Kupp himself. Wow. Again, usually you don't hear your own player come out and say that your team is trying to trade you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Rams were expecting that. I think they probably told him in private. And maybe it was Cooper Kupp's decision to just go out and let the public know. I mean, Cooper Kupp's a stand-up guy, and I think he just wanted to be honest with the fans and let everybody know, hey, don't buy any more Cooper Kupp jerseys or don't plan on me being there because the team obviously wants to move in a different direction. And honestly, again, I'm not surprised to see this as well. I mean, you saw as the season moved on they really started to face Cooper Kupp out of the offense. They were really relying on the run with Kyron Williams, and they were obviously relying on Puka Nacua, who's obviously now their new star. He is their new Cooper Kupp. So I think that's probably why they decided to move on. I mean, Cooper Kupp's a guy who is going to be 31, 32 years old next season. It seems like his best years are behind him. So it definitely seems like they're trying to trade him and get rid of him a year too early than a year too late. And like I said, you could tell just by the way the team was game plan at the end of the season that Puka Nacua was the offense and it was no longer Cooper Kupp. So I think it makes sense. And Cooper Kupp could go to another probably winning franchise and maybe be their key guy.
I mean, he was hurt. That also didn't help his case. Like, he's had many injuries over the years being off the field. So maybe the Rams were basically like, all right, we can't keep paying this guy if he's not going to be on the field to perform. Puka Nacua looks like a stud, but he's been hurt a lot too. So I don't know if that's really a legitimate argument. But his tweet was interesting. I was informed that the team will be seeking a trade immediately and will be working with me and my family to find the right place to continue competing for championships. I don't agree with the decision and always believed it was going to begin and end in LA. Still, if there's one thing that I've learned over the years, there are so many things that are out of my control, but it is how you respond to these things that we'll look back on and remember. I've taken so much pride in playing alongside my teammates for the LA community, so thank you for embracing my family and making this such a special place for us. 2024 began with one of the best training camps in my career. Preparations start now for 2025. Highly motivated, as healthy as ever, and looking forward to playing elite football for years to come. Love you guys, but coming for it all. I think this is a mistake. Just, he's an LA guy. He's been with the franchise. Is he a little hurt? Yes, but most NFL players are banged up and hurt. I was very surprised by this, really. Like, he's a franchise guy. Most of the time, you don't see franchise guy getting traded. Do you think this is a good move, a bad move, or what?
I mean, I said I wasn't surprised, but I mean, I don't think it's a good move. I mean, I understand that he does have the injuries and he is getting older, but I mean, he is the LA Rams. I mean, he's been their guy there for so long, and I feel like his heart and soul is in LA. And just like he said it in the tweet, it felt like it was almost an anomaly and a certain that he was going to be able to finish his career and retire as an LA Ram. So, it seems like, he was the perfect guy for Matthew Stafford. It seemed like they had a bond that was unbreakable. It seemed like he was the perfect guy for Sean McVay. So, I mean, maybe it's just, it's business. Maybe at the end of the day, they want him there, but maybe as a business, they don't want to pay him the money for him being hurt and also for him being, starting to get to that older age where you start to see receivers decline in their early 30s.
Yeah, I mean, again, he's a really good player, but he can't stay healthy. And that's part of the reason why they probably have to get out from under the contract and from under him, because they want to put in someone who can actually play ball. And like you said, Kyron Williams has been really good from the running back perspective. And I feel like they've kind of adjusted more to a running game than a passing game. So maybe that's just when push came to shove, they said, all right, if we're not going to play passing football, we don't need Cooper Kupp anymore. When that's going to be a cost, and if he gets hurt, then we're going to be on the hook for it anyway. So I guess not surprising, but it is surprising that it came from Cooper Kupp himself on social media. All right, let's move on. Back to the NBA for a second. 2025 NBA All-Star rosters announced. I have both of them up here. The starters, Jalen Brunson, who we just talked about, Jason Tatum, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Donovan Mitchell, who's had an incredible year so far, and Karl Anthony Towns. So 2 Knicks in the starting lineup. Obviously, the Celtics have been kind of slumping as of late. Jason Tatum's had a pretty good year. Donovan Mitchell and the Cavs just look like they just want to go off. And then Giannis averaging 32 points a game, by the way. I don't have any problem with that starting lineup. Do you?
No, I don't have any problem with the starting lineup. I guess my upset would be more so who they picked for the reserves. I think there was a certain player who got snubbed.
So let's go through the reserves. So Jaylen Brown, not a surprise. Darius Garland, Evan Mobley. I mean, Cleveland's having a good year, so most of them are going to make the roster. Tyler Hero, Hero, I was kind of surprised, but he's having a really good year with Miami, considering all the drama with Jimmy Butler. Pascal Siakam, okay, that's kind of hit or miss to me. Cade Cunningham has actually had a really good year, and Detroit's having a little bit of a resurgence, a little bit. I wouldn't say it's great, but it's better. And then Damian Lillard, again, I think that's just a product of being a name. Who is the guy you say you're getting snubbed?
So the guy who I think got snubbed, I think LaMelo Ball should have made the All-Star. I mean, the guy's
Oh,
one of the leading scorers in the NBA. I mean, he can rebound, he can assist. His defense isn't that bad. And ultimately, he's the heart and soul of the Charlotte Hornets. And he carries a team that ultimately really isn't that great of a team and that great of a franchise. I mean, ultimately, I think LaMelo Ball should have been there over Tyler Hero.
I could see that. So, and LaMelo, if I'm not mistaken, has been like a triple-double machine also. Like, the guy puts up stats. He's a stat sheet filler. And those are good players to have. Again, I think the only reason Tyler Hero made it is because everyone feels bad for Miami with what's going on over there. But that's neither here nor there. Now, on the Western Conference side, a lot of big names in the starting lineup. Steph Curry, I don't know why he's in the starting lineup. That one I kind of question a little bit because he hasn't been Steph Curry-like. Kevin Durant, he's been okay. I wouldn't say he's been Kevin Durant's star quality. Obviously, Alexander, obviously, he's like your big star of the league right now. That would make sense. LeBron, because it's in LA. He's having a good year at age 40, but it's in LA. I'm just going to keep saying that. It's in LA. And then Jokic is just, you can't say anything else. The only one I would question is Curry being in the starting lineup because I don't think he's had a good year. And I think age and mileage is starting to catch up with him. I don't know. Do you have any other questions on that starting lineup?
No, I agree with you. I think it definitely for the starters in the West, I think they definitely went more so based on name and star power. Obviously, all those guys, are going to be in the All-Star and deserve to make it, but maybe some of those guys didn't deserve to be starters this year. But I think because of the name and because I think, maybe this is the last time we see LeBron, Curry, and KD all be starters in the All-Star, I think the NBA decided to capitalize on that.
That's a good point. Actually, one name right off the top as I look at the reserves of Western Conference, I think should have been a starter over Steph Curry. And that's a certain Anthony Edwards could have been a starter. In my opinion, I think he's had an incredible year so far. Let's see, Anthony Davis, obviously. James Harden's kind of had a little bit of a resurgence. Jared Jackson Jr. was a Defensive Player of the Year guy, right? He's a really good player. I just feel like sometimes he doesn't play to his full potential. Şengün, the guy from the Rockets. This guy's going to be a stud. I watched a few games of him over the last couple of weeks. He's going to be a really good player.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. The two guys I want to mention lastly before we move on is Cade Cunningham. I mean, I love that guy at Oklahoma State. I thought he was going to be an absolute franchise player, and I'm glad that he's finally got some teammates around him in Detroit who are starting to finally play good. So, because I think he's been playing at an all-star level for 2 or 3 years now. It's just the team around him hasn't played good enough for the rest of the world and the country to be able to see how good Cade Cunningham is. So he's definitely deserving. I mean, he's almost a triple-double king as well. And Şengün as well. I mean, what he's done with the Rockets, I mean, obviously they got other players like Jalen Green and Fred VanVleet, but he's their main guy. I mean, he's pretty much almost a 20-10 guy. Plus his defense, I mean, he's the star player, and he's the reason why the Rockets are one of the second or third seeds in the West right now.
Actually, he's a 20-10-5 guy, actually. So the guy's incredible. Jalen Williams Thunder, and then obviously because no rookie really makes the starting lineup in the All-Star game, but Victor Wembanyama obviously was going to make the All-Star game. I could argue that he could have been the starter this year, really, over Steph Curry, to be honest.
Well, I think he couldn't be the starter over Steph Curry. I think it would have to be a guard.
Well, I just meant generally if I was going to pull somebody out.
Oh yeah, I think he's had a better year than Steph Curry.
I mean, I'm looking. You're not going to put him. I might take. This might be a little bit of a hot take, but I would take Wembanyama over Durant right now.
Oh yeah, I think Wembanyama's having probably a better season than Durant. I mean, he's real close to LeBron. I mean, obviously you got to put LeBron over him, but I think there's even a debate between LeBron and Wemby for a starter.
Yeah. So if I could have one change, I might actually put Wembanyama on display as a starter. I think that just helps the NBA, which is having decline in ratings right now. So anything you could put him in, I would put him in right now, immediately, and just make that work if you could. But for the most part, I think you and I agree that they pretty much got most of it right. Is there anything glaring otherwise that you would have changed or no?
No, I think besides that, the only one I thought of was LaMelo Ball. One other player I could possibly say is John Morant. I mean, pretty much since he's been back, the Grizzlies have been great. I mean, I know you got Jaren Jackson and some other good players, but obviously John Morant is the heart and soul and face of that franchise. So John Morant would be the only other guy. But in the West, it's really hard to make it as a guard. But I definitely think LaMelo Ball should have made it over Tyler Hero.
Yeah. In the long run, I think he'll be a better player than Tyler Hero, even though Tyler Hero has turned into a really nice player. But LaMelo has actually been way better than everyone expected. No one expected LaMelo to be the best brother of all them playing. But I also agree with you. I think Josh should have been the representative for the Grizzlies over Jaren Jackson Jr. I think there'll be plenty of years for Jaren Jackson Jr. to make the All-Star game for sure. But he strikes me more as a defensive-minded player than a offensive-minded player. How many DOYs does he have? He's got at least one, right?
I think he's got one, but he's definitely been improving with his scoring. He's not really a bad shooter. I think he's almost a 19 to 20 point a game a guy. So he's definitely not John Morant scoring, but he's definitely a decent scorer that you have to game plan for.
Oh, wait. He's actually averaging 23.3 points a game. I didn't even realize that. That goes to show you that sometimes even when your best defensive guy has to really step up and score, that maybe you got to look at the rest of the team. But again, not surprised. I think Steph Curry, KD, and LeBron, like you said, that was going to be the last All-Star game you're going to see them start. But I don't know. The All-Star weekend is just tough to watch in general. It is. No one's watching the dunk contest anymore. Does anyone care about the what's the team competition called? The skills contest. Does anyone care? I certainly don't.
You could look at a potential three-peat with Mac McClung.
Talk about a guy who just keeps finding his way into the NBA All-Star weekend, even when he's not on a team. I am here. Let me enter the dunk contest and go viral. All right. Last few topics. We'll do these quickly. More from your realm. You understand this a little better than me, but I did see this. There were shockwaves going on around the world when Adesanya got TKO'd. Zan was telling me this was a huge thing. Like, is this as big as like everyone is making it out to be?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you don't see a guy like Israel Adesanya get knocked out very easily. I mean, the guys who knock him out are guys like Alex Pereira, who everybody touches just dies. So, I mean, for Imavov to go in there, I mean, that was very impressive. And it looked like Israel Adesanya said that when he got poked in the eye, maybe he should have took a little bit more time to recover. And he thinks maybe that factor into it. But I just think at the end of the day, Israel Adesanya has just been on the decline. He's lost his last couple fights, I think, ever since Alex Pereira knocked him out. You know, usually with UFC fighters, once they get knocked out one good time, they're never the same fighter. And I think that's what happened with Israel Adesanya. He wasn't that good against Sean Strickland. He lost against Shrikis Duplessis, and now he's lost to Imavov. So I feel like his best days are behind him as well. And it's unfortunate because he's an all-time great, but his legacy's set. He's one of the greatest UFC fighters of all time. He had the belt for a long time. It's just he's no longer in his prime anymore. And we got young guys like Imavov, you know, moving up the rankings and trying to build up their own legacy.
I know Adesanya, but I was surprised. Like Zan, when he told me, he's like, oh, he's the big name in the sport, and he just got knocked out. I was like, whoa. Like, that was making headlines everywhere. And then quickly, you want to just do a UFC 312, just kind of set that up for everybody?
Yeah, I don't really got to spend much time on this because a lot of people know it's not a deep card. Really, only the first two fight is all that matters. You got a women's championship bout that's going to be very entertaining, but the main event is a rematch of a guy I just spoke about earlier, Dricus Du Plessis against Sean Strickland. The two guys that beat Israel Adesanya. Now they're rematching. These guys fought last year in January. Now Dricus won, but it was very controversial. People like Dana White, Joe Rogan, a lot of other people thought Sean Strickland should have won by decision. Well, I guess we're ultimately going to find out who's ultimately the better fighter. And I can't wait. I mean, both these guys love to brawl. I mean, Dricus has an awkward style where he just basically goes into the fire and just basically has a bar fight with you. And obviously, Sean Strickland loves to box. So it's going to be a striking match where both guys are going to, really hurt each other. But ultimately, I think Dricus will probably win again.
Yeah, you know what? I'm trying to get more into the sport because it seems like a very entertaining sport. I'm curious your thoughts because Zan and Pat talked about this on Outsiders. What did you make of what's his name, Bryce Mitchell?
Oh yeah, I didn't like his comments at all, and what he was saying about Hitler being a good man. I mean, obviously Dana White, put an end to that, saying obviously that's disrespectful. Hitler's one of the worst human beings that ever existed. Now, obviously Dana White's not going to suspend him because Dana White's all about freedom of speech. And he's obviously kept that for a long time, and he's not going to break that rule. So ultimately, he's not going to punish Bryce Mitchell. But I feel like Bryce Mitchell should have been punished. I mean, you can't be saying things like that. But also, like Dana White said, you also have a sport to where someone could go out there and punch him in the mouth for saying that. So maybe they're going to put him up against a knockout artist, and maybe he'll get knocked out for some of the wrong things he said.
Were you surprised that he wasn't like directly reprimanded or cut from the UFC?
I mean, yeah, I feel like obviously the UFC likes to have freedom of speech, but we've seen like how they treated a guy like Muhammad Mokaev, who they didn't like the way he acted and some of the things he did outside the octagon. So I feel like there might be a double standard here where, why was Muhammad Mokaev, reprimanded and talked so bad about, but why is Bryce Mitchell able to say what he's able to say? I think there's a double standard there, and I wouldn't have been surprised if Dana White would have cut him. I feel like he should have. I mean, he's not a championship fighter at this point, anyways. He just got knocked out, last year. So I feel like the UFC should just let him go. But maybe the fans will get what they want, and maybe they can see someone in the octagon knock him out again.
I mean, what's ironic about some of this? It was the one and only podcast episode I think he'll ever do, because that was his like branded podcast that he was doing. I mean, come on, dude. Really? That's the topic you want everybody to remember you for? Not that maybe you knock somebody out or you put up a good fight against a big name. No, you have to defend Hitler. I mean, like, what is wrong with you? Like, you have to realize at today's age, like, you can't say anything like that. And if I'm wrong, because I remember hearing something, like, he did research on Hitler. Like, what? He's a bad guy. That's it. You don't need to say anything else.
It's like what Sean Strickland said. We live in a day where there's so much access to the internet. Sometimes people spend too much time on the internet and read a lot of too many articles they shouldn't be reading, and then, say things like that.
Yeah, but isn't it true that Strickland has a little bit of a big mouth also?
Yeah. He says a lot of things that aren't, good as well. So
politically
I guess
incorrect.
He's got a double standard as well.
You mean politically incorrect things that he says from time to time, and isn't it true he got into fight with media members while at a press conference and stuff? Like,
I don't know about physical altercations, but
no, not physical. Like, not physical. Like, he would just fight back and forth, like during.
Oh, yeah.
That's like his MO. Like, he'll just fight with the press.
He's very controversial and polarizing.
But I don't know. I was just curious because of all topics, that's not one I would think that would be touched. Just saying. So I don't know. But that'll do it for episode 265 of Empty the Bench here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETB Network, where we're approaching 1,000 subscribers. So please help us get to that number, because we are really trying to grow the platform and really get to a place where we could bring more content to everybody and all shows. Listen to Empty the Bench wherever you get your podcast, or any of the other shows across the network, wherever you get your podcasts. Obviously, Empty the Bench presented by Playback, full network presented by Playback. We're going to be getting back to doing some NBA streams, a bunch of everything. So please be alert for that. Make sure you check out the ETB Substack, etbnetwork.substack.com, where our short series is going to debut tomorrow, Thursday. Alley-oop Analytics. We have a lot to talk about in the NBA trade deadline. We'll break some of these trades down. If you want to see our NBA trade deadline reaction and trade reaction and what's coming for the trade deadline, please subscribe to the ETB Network Substack. $5 a month gets you everything that's involved in there as well. Whew. Okay. I think I made it through everything. So we can put a bow on this episode. For Anthony Balester, I'm Nick Morgasen. Have a good week, everybody. We will see you after the Super Bowl is over. That's one thing I left out. We will be doing a Super Bowl live stream for Football Forecast, which you and I will be part of. Everybody else will be part of. We're probably going to have like 8 or 9 people on that stream alone. That'll be Saturday, February 8th, 4 p.m. Eastern to 6 p.m. Eastern. Not that we're going to use the full window, but that's where we're allotting just in case we go longer. But we will go live. It's a tradition we do for the Super Bowl. We always do that episode live. So join us then. And we'll break everything down from the game to the props to all the annoying Taylor Swift BS that goes on during the festivities. So just make sure you check us out there. Okay, now that I got through everything, he's Anthony Balester. I'm Nick Morgasen. Make sure you join us every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific for when our episodes drop. And obviously listen wherever you get your podcast. Okay. Have a good week, everybody. We will see you next week. See you later.